French food, cuisine, ratatouille, Italian food, spaghetti and meatballs, red sauce. Everybody is obsessed with French and Italian food. We have a ton of it in America. But why is Spanish food so underrated? And I just think that like not every country in the world could really lay claim to the culinary riches that Spain does. I mean, you have this perfect storm of raw ingredients from the Atlantic, from the Mediterranean, from the mountains, the Pyrenees, from these crazy dry, arid climates that are great for warm weather fruits or for drying cured meat. You have this perfect storm of microclimates, product, tradition, and innovation that just makes Spain so amazing and means that it is totally undervalued on the world stage. That's what I've been obsessed with lately, and that's what I've been thinking about, and that's what I wanted to make a video about, to talk about the reasons behind the fact that Spain just does not get enough credit for how freaking delicious everything is here. I mean, this is a place with some of the most delicious wines, cheeses, dishes, the most incredible restaurants in the world, and it's all sort of plays second or third fiddle from an Anglo-Saxon point of view to French and Italy, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Why is Spain just getting the short end of the stick? So there's actually a lot of reasons why Spain has never been quite in the spotlight with its food like Italy and France have. We're going to take this video from a American Anglo-Saxon point of view. That's what I am. I live in San Sebastian in Basque Country, and I am often obsessed with the fact that, you know, people that I know back home don't know much about Spanish food, or they have a very small idea, when in reality it's this huge, expansive, super rich, and often super complex cuisine. If I asked you to name a Spanish dish, could you name one? Okay, let me guess. You said paella. Can you name another one? Gazpacho. Oh good, that's right. Okay, what about another one? Well, sangria is not a dish, but okay. You can't think of any more? You can't? You know, those 3 food and drink items plus a couple more is all that most people have ever even heard about Spanish cuisine. And that is actually down to several different reasons. You can start by looking a little bit at the patterns of colonization and immigration in the Americas. Spain definitely arrived to the New World first-ish from Europe, but the way that they ended up colonizing and the indigenous peoples that they ended up pillaging happened to be sort of from the south of what is now the United States down. And the hold that they had in the south of the United States was not, you know, as entrenched and was not as powerful as the hold that they had in Central and South America. So those countries, obviously Spanish is spoken. Some of them still have a very tight relationship with Spain. They still get tons of immigration, especially in the 1800s, from different parts of Spain looking for work. So the relationship and the traditions are very strong there. Whereas in America, you actually find very few vestiges of the actual Spanish occupation. You probably don't know any Spanish immigrant communities because there just aren't. You know, you had a huge influx of Italians, Italian Americans, and you have a lot of French influence in the United States, but you just don't get that same thing with Spanish. And that's a huge reason, I think, why Italian and French cuisine is so valued and why Spanish cuisine is just sort of like a mystery. So currently that trend is like kind of being undone by what I tend to think of, especially when I visit Barcelona, as the reverse colonization of Spain. So now millions, dozens of millions of Americans flood into Spain every year for a little trip, for a little fun, for a little wine, a little cheap wine. They come back, you know, knowing more about Spain, and I think that is helping to turn this whole trend around to, you know, broaden awareness of Spanish cuisine, and it's actually doing a lot to sort of bridge this gap. So I have heard some Spaniards spout the claim that the reason that their cuisine might not be so widely appreciated is because they've always been crap at promoting themselves. And it's true. I live in Basque Country, and these people are super proud of their traditions and their food and everything they have, but they're also really humble. And, you know, you could debate about why that happened. Maybe it's an inferiority complex. Maybe it has to do with the fact that they were pretty poor in the 20th century, or maybe it has to do with the Catholic upbringing. I don't know. You could think of many reasons why that is, but I do think, you know, part of the reason Spanish cuisine hasn't reached the heights that French and Italian is from an American point of view is perhaps the humility and the just not liking to kind of get out there and sell themselves. So if we're going to explore why Spanish food is so underrated from an American Anglo-Saxon point of view, we definitely have to look at the 20th century. So start with the World Wars. World War II, the American soldiers in Europe, they were mostly stationed not in Spain. Most soldiers never stepped foot in Spain. So instead of bringing, things from the different countries, whether it was France, Italy, or wherever, that just didn't happen. That exchange didn't happen in World War II. And then you can look at also the geopolitical history of Spain itself. Spain was under a dictatorship under Franco until the end of the 1970s. A dictatorship means a couple different things, but some of those are, not having a lot of money, some at times poverty-stricken country. It also means that, borders were very closed. Looking to the outside world was not something that was encouraged, and everyone was kept in sort of a strict line. So I think, that kind of, in a lot of ways, kept Spain sort of a step or two or many behind its other European neighbors. Another reason that Spanish food is super undervalued goes back to the tradition and the way of life in Spain. So for a lot of the 20th century, people were still living really rural lives. There were a lot of people living off the land or living off the sea. What did that mean? That meant that there weren't, as many populations in big cities. Traditional cooking still had this really strong root in the culture. And it wasn't until in the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s, that this whole new generation of nueva cocina started to happen. So you started to get chefs that had gone out of Spain and had trained under French chefs. They came back and they brought these new ideas, these fresh ideas, the nueva cocina vasca. They were obsessed with promoting Basque cuisine and showing the world that it was just as amazing as the cuisine of France and the cuisine in Japan. And they did. They started in the 1970s, 1980s, a movement, and they had sophisticated techniques. They made really refined dishes, and they ran kitchens like nobody's business. They had stages coming through all the time, and what that did was month after month, season after season, year after year, created sort of this force of people with really intense kitchen training with a high level of skill that would then, many of them, go back to their provinces, Asturias, Cádiz, Málaga, wherever, and maybe open their own restaurant. And so the basic level of skill and the basic level in restaurants and bars just begin to rise. And that's what happens here in San Sebastian, is everybody and their mom has gone through a Michelin star restaurant. And so there's just this kind of just basic level of knowledge in whatever kitchen that's just really quite high. And that definitely has helped with the growth and the development and the maturity of the Spanish cuisine, and is what now makes it just crazy that it's not as famous and not as well known and not as celebrated as France or Italy. I guess I don't mean really that it's not as celebrated, because it is, but like the average knowledge of an American person about Spanish cuisine is so much lower than it is about Italian and French, and I don't think you can argue that. Today, what Spanish cuisine is an amazing collection of delicious produce, age-old techniques, traditional recipes that is still maintained in its traditional version, but has also been taken by these now 3 generations of chefs with really high skill levels and transformed into something new. And it's just a living, breathing cuisine that's so amazing, and it just blows my mind when everybody thinks it's only gazpacho and sangria and paella, which I love, by the way. I eat those all the time and love them, but there's so much more and nobody knows. So yeah, I'd love to hear what your personal thoughts are on why Spain is underrated, or maybe you think Spain isn't underrated, but if you do, then you're wrong. But you can tell me in the comments below and we can talk about it together. Okay, bye.